You were not born for billions of years and you'll be dead for billions of years. And this is just a tiny little piece of time that you get to do some shit.
Yeah, it's wrong.
All right.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, go. Welcome, everybody, to another much anticipated, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for you, episode of Raising Spirits. With me, one of your hosts here, Will, and of course, the illustrious, infamous, and all-around okay guy, Nate.
If Shannon Sharp was doing that intro, he would have done a lot better.
Well, that's why he has more followers than us.
Step your game up.
One of the reasons. Probably the only reason. Today, we are talking sports. It's something that comes up in a lot of our leadership conversations, a lot of our business conversations. It is one of the easiest ways to get a point across is a sports analogy. But it really fits because there is a lot of analogous and a lot of similarities between sports and business leadership. And I think it's worth talking about today because we're right in the middle. We're on the cusp here of the World Cup. We got some playoff hockey going on right now. We're in the midst of baseball season. Nate's already doing fantasy drafts. The Cavs, I believe, are still performing pretty well in the playoffs as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Game's on right now, tied 2-2.
Sports ball is on fire right now. So I thought, and Nate being the sports head that he is, constantly having ESPN, I think one of those headphones he has is for the podcast. The other one, he's probably streaming a podcast about sports right now as we speak.
What'd you say?
I think it's a perfect opportunity just to talk about a few of these similarities and how folks out there that are in leadership roles in business, in hospitality, all those things can take some of these strategies that these top athletes, these billion-dollar brands use to be elite in their field. We can use the exact same strategies and thought processes to be elite in business.
Right on. I dig it.
So the first one that comes to mind as we kind of research this is just having the right mindset, pre-gaming, something Nate is very, very adept at. Now, getting the focus on, continuously trying to improve your ability to perform, doing the homework. And what I really found is the term that came up again and again is next play mentality. Preparing, always having that mindset of what is the next thing to do, not necessarily dwelling on the past, but learning from it and using those things to take on that next challenge.
You got to play chess. Can't be playing checkers. No, the mentality perspective. I mean, I love my pre-gaming for sure, but the mentality part. It's interesting because the production you get from somebody who's invested in and loves what they're doing obviously is going to be more significant, and so you want those people that have an interest and a desire to be successful, and if it's something that's important to them, they're gonna obviously do a better job of it. It's similar to from a culture perspective, where if you have a team that like each other and or have a bond, they're gonna go further lengths to get the job done better. So I think that from the mindset perspective and owning what you're doing in your role or in your job, seeing that production increase, I think it goes hand in hand.
That's a huge point, actually. The teamwork aspect of the mindset, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the people next to you and when to pass the ball, when is it appropriate to bring somebody else in. When I kind of was looking at mindset as a sports, mentality, Michael Jordan obviously came up, being able to think about that next play and constantly be ahead. Kobe with the Mamba mentality.
Yes,
he was
sir.
one that was mentioned a lot. Brady, but also I obviously am a baseball guy. So I was thinking about Albert Pujols. He was always famous for, even though he was a slugger, he just went out there as a big guy and was able to knock the shit out of a ball. He was famous for doing his homework. He would watch film. He was researching the pitchers. So it wasn't just, natural ability that made him so successful at the plate. It was his determination to do the homework, do the pregame, go in there with as much intelligence on that next at bat, that next play mentality. I thought that was huge. And it really made sense to me watching him play.
Yeah, again, whatever it is you're doing, again, the belief, if you're going to do it well, do your homework, do your research, prepare yourself. And again, oftentimes those successful, whether it's in sports or, in the business world, it truly their preparation and stuff, it leads to that same degree of success. So, you're talking about team, and we think of what MVPs more recently, Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, he individually, and I just recently saw Troy Aikman was telling him, don't put so much on your shoulders. He's an amazing athlete by himself. And obviously he has a team around him, but lean more on your team. You can only do so much. They call him kind of Superman is I think one of his nicknames, but all these professional athletes that may have amazing ability, talents, and individually could be incredibly successful, they're limited to the people around them. And again, you got to utilize your team. I feel like I made a career off of not knowing everything. I always thought I knew everything or wanted to know everything, but it was about
That all
knowing the
checks out.
right. Yeah. Yeah. If you, it all, it at the same time, it was about knowing somebody who could get the job done and reaching out to those connections and the relationships that I had built throughout the years. So when I needed something that I didn't know of, I could lean on the person who was going to get the job done the best, which also leads to my, my fence painting ability of finding something that someone loves to do. Because again, back to what we were talking about earlier, they're going to do it much better, and they're going to have that, that energy to do it at that higher level. Plus, it's a double positive. You're going to get better production from them, but they are going to enjoy doing it that much more.
That's very important. I think what you said first, not so much the subtle manipulation that I've been a victim of from you on occasion. It's the humility of knowing what you don't know, and part of that prep is asking questions and not being ashamed to ask questions to make sure that you are, thoroughly ready for that next play. Doing the work, and from a fence painting standpoint, yeah, having the mindset of putting aces in places. You think about that in any sort of any hospitality service industry position. I remember when I was a barista at Starbucks, I would do 2 people's worth of drink making so that I could put the 2 girls on the registers, because I knew they were going to make more tips than me. So I just knew that was the right way to do it. They were much better with people. I don't want to talk to people. You know how I am. I would much rather bury myself in a process and pump out all these drinks. Same situation when you're running a restaurant and you're looking at the floor, and I used to run a restaurant that had river views. So that front section with all the big windows, that's where everybody would want to sit. Everybody walks in. So that's going to get pounded all day long. So you got to put your aces in places. And sometimes, you have to do your homework, obviously, to know who those aces are, but you also have to do a little bit of pre-work to make sure that your, kings and queens and jacks don't feel like they're being left out because you're putting aces in places. That make that an aspiration, understand where your people are coming from, where their thought process is and how their mindset is. So it's much more of a psychology than I think it's given credit for. It seems like you're just working the spread, putting people out where you think they should, but it really is like chess. You gotta protect the home front there whilst going out to attack the other side.
Yeah, I I remember when I first moved to Ohio and was getting the VLT department up and rolling and had a handful of supervisors, and I started leaning on a couple of them, and hopefully one or two of them are watching this nowadays. But one of them stopped me, pulled me to the side after I kind of gave out tasks, and said, why do you always separate me from the group? You don't think I can handle it? I said, well, actually, it's quite the opposite, my friend. And don't tell anybody, but I'm actually confident in you getting this job done. And I want to rely on somebody who's not going to, make me extra work by having to go behind them and redo it. So, again, once he asked, he buckled down, probably, felt the air in that extra stripe, and he got to hustling just like he did. And that was one of the reasons that I know I found him. But I'm still amazed that your female barista's coming too. It's awesome.
Decision making, the ability to make the call. That was the next piece that we found when we were looking at this. I think Dan Gilbert said it best. You got to take the roast out of the oven. Always loved
Ism.
that ism from him. Using what you know to predict future behavior and be able to take the correct action and just taking action, not being afraid to do it, and knowing the failure is a possibility. You still have to take action.
Yeah, I miss those ism classes. The one
It really
we
was
went
good.
to
It really
up
was.
in Detroit. It was a great philosophy. I actually just used one this week. The slow kills companies. And
Dan Gilbert, if
you
you're
know,
watching, and I'm sure you are, you're more than welcome to reach out to Ashley, and we'd be happy to have you on anytime you like.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's so many pieces to the puzzle, right? Of success. And again, we've talked about team, we've talked about mentality, and all these pieces have to operate together in order to be, truly successful and good at what you're doing. And that roast out of the oven philosophy and ism, great. I probably still have the book somewhere around here, and as soon as I get a
I got
bookshelf,
3 copies, 3 years worth. I still have.
I'm gonna have it up here on the bookshelf soon enough. We got
Once
to
you
get
get a
like
lamp,
100 followers and
you'll
a
be
couple
reading by
hundred views.
flashlight in there, but he'll have his books.
Leave me alone.
Some people that are known from their decision making from a sports standpoint. I selected because I'm obviously, like I said, baseball guy. Greg Maddux. He was very much about making his pitch, and if he knew that he could fail, and if he failed, it goes back to mindset again, what we just talked about. He would log that. There's a famous story by a catcher that Greg Maddux threw one up and inside, and then he threw another one. The guy hit a bomb. The catcher says, "I'm sorry, I must have called the wrong pitch or whatever." He's like, "No, he's going to be looking for that pitch next time. And when I give him something that looks like it and it's going to dive, he's not going to swing at it." And it wasn't till months later in a playoff game, division series or something like that, that he is in the same position with the same batter, throws him something that's got some stink on it, like he would, because he's the professor. And he goes up to the catcher and says, like, "Hey, remember when I told you I was going to throw that guy that?" He made that decision based on how the outcome of the situation was. If that guy wouldn't have hit a bomb, he probably wouldn't have been able to strike him out down the road and win the playoff game. But he made the decision to just let loose with what he had. Wayne Gretzky was big on that, being able to just to fire a shot. Lionel Messi, a more contemporary, situation where in Miami, that's all I freaking see is cardboard cutouts of Lionel Messi. That motherfucker is representing every damn thing in the city. I thought he was working fucking the greeter at Walmart. There's like 6 of him at the front.
I like it. I think about the coaches that are, amazing at what they do in adjusting and play calling and such. The Belichick's, you know, I'm a Matt LaFleur fan, obviously, being from Green Bay, and he's got his own opportunity. But some of these best coaches that can go in at halftime, make those adjustments, but sometimes they're continuing to call these plays knowing that they're potentially going to get snuffed out on the early on, so then they can hit that bomb. Because again, they're doing their homework, they're setting it up, teeing it up. They're essentially, they're a pool shark, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're losing, and then when someone's anteing up big, they're winning and they're hustling them. And reminds me, you ever see Pool Hall Junkies? It's a good flick.
Mm-mm.
Watch that
Is
one.
that Ben Affleck?
Shit, I don't know who the hell's in it. No, I think Cusack, if I'm not mistaken. John Cusack. But no, good flick. My buddy Charles. But again, Aaron Rodgers, obviously, he has that ability. Tom Brady was good at it too. But to read and it's constantly a chess match with those, inside linebackers, the Mikes of the defense, and he's playing a game within a game. And Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, through their nonverbal communications at the line, have been known to do it well. And again, I'm sure it translates to all other different sports, but that long term, long game, thinking is huge, and having that plan is incredibly important in whatever facet of life you're in.
Yeah, tying it back to business, it is very much like what you said. Slow kills companies. You have to make the decisions based on the information you have. You have to be confident enough to fail, and know that your team will help you recover. And there's nothing worse than inaction. It's worse than failure, never having tried. So being able to make a decision, whether it works out or not, the sheer fact that somebody's in a position to be able to make a decision is probably one of the things that leads people into leadership. It's one of those not immeasurables that people look for in
It's fun.
pushing people up the ladder.
It's funny because it reminds me of when you told me after you hired me why you didn't hire me the first time, and the fact that you thought I saw everything kind of black and white, essentially, being an operations guy and by the book, and, mix and X, and, our procedures and policies and slots and BLT that I grew up on over the previous decade. And, obviously I had to learn to adjust and look at that gray area between. And I think you told me, I'm going to be more mad that you're afraid of making the wrong choice because you knew that I didn't like to be wrong. And, you told me, make the mistake, make it fast. We can correct it, and then we can bounce back. But I don't want somebody who's going to sit there and pump fake and not, make a decision. So
You learned a thing. Look at that.
yeah, I wasn't
That
saying
that is
anything
huge,
positive
though.
about you.
That is something I always found, and this is for better or worse. This doesn't work out every time, but I always wanted people to go out and make mistakes so that they knew what it felt like, and knew what that the repercussions weren't going to be. It's always worse in your head. You always feel like, oh, I'm going to make one mistake and suddenly I'm out on my ass, and I'm staring at all these bills, and I got knowing it's never as bad as you think it is. Not doing it. Once you do it, whatever the outcome is, it's always better than not doing it, whatever it exists in your head. So being able to make that, getting past that, I had a host way back in Nevada that would call me every Saturday, every Sunday, every time there needed to be a decision made. And I'm like, eventually I just stopped answering her. She's like, I need help. I'm like, I know you do, but I'm not going to give it to you anymore. You have to just go do it. You know what to do. You have the tools. You have to go out and use them. You have to learn to make a decision without somebody else verifying it or somebody else, qualifying it for you. And that's
Yeah.
huge in any level of business, from a server on the floor deciding which table to go to first based on what they know, how long they've been waiting, how they're acting, how their face looks, all the way up to CEO level, knowing where I need to make cuts and where I need to invest. It's across the board.
I got a guy I work with now, and shout out to Daryl. He's he's new, up and coming in the role
Darkwing
that
Duck, I believe you called him the other day.
yeah. And so he, it's funny because he called me last week and he said, I'm kicking myself. I've been beating myself up over the past few hours. He basically, gave away a bunch of money, but it was his own money, and he wasn't even mad about that. He was more, one, embarrassed that it happened, but one thing that I told him, don't worry about it. We'll get through it. We'll get over it. We took care of a customer. You're good. He said, yeah, I'm just so mad that I made that simple mistake. And he said, but don't worry, Nick. I'm the guy who, once I make that mistake once, especially because it hurt my pocket, I'm not making that thing ever again. Ever again. One of my alarms going off. This one was to breathe in and breathe out.
Maybe set that one again. Put a 15-minute on that. So that actually ties in perfectly with the third point that I found that was very common across, elite athletes, but also makes a ton of sense from a business standpoint. It's something I think we don't pay enough attention to, and it's recovery. When you're out there, whether it's, out there physically exerting yourself, you got to take care of yourself there, But when you're mentally exerting yourself, or, in the case of sometimes in the hospitality business, emotionally exerting yourself, dealing with the public and their demands, and the demands of those, who employ you, and everything in between, there has to be a time for recovery. You can't tear the muscle and not let it heal to get bigger. You have to have that self-care from a mental and physical. You have to know your limits and work within them, push them, but make sure that you're not going to break. Um, some of the people that came up, having just been forced to watch the Winter Olympics, Lindsey Vonn was a big story in a comeback there. Taking that time, obviously, unfortunately, had that bad spill on her last run there, but great story of coming back. Simone Biles take a time off from being the absolute top of her game because it was affecting her mentally. A lot of controversy around that, took a ton of hate, which probably didn't help. She says that she's having some problems handling the place mentally, and then everybody shits on her. That's an important lesson about life. That's a different podcast. Drew Brees was always one. He was known for being like into yoga and stretching and things. That's how he said he always stayed healthy and was able to play so many games. And when he would get injured, he would heal faster because he had built up his body to be able to take those hits. And LeBron, of all people, I did not realize this. He spends egregious amounts of money on cryotherapy, and I believe, was he one that went and did stem cells too? Maybe. I mean, he probably would have kept that under the boat, but I know there's a lot of them that go out there and do that kind of a therapy as well. And then, but it also comes down to just preparing yourself for the media too. When you're playing at that level,
You got to have your mental right, you know? And I think that's how bad is the what?
I was gonna say, how bad is the media up in Green Bay? But I'm sure that one guy was very nice to the players.
Rob Domofsky and Wes Hodkowitz are pretty cool. I actually went to Wes went to the same high school I went to and graduated from. But they they're not animals, they're not sharks, and I think one thing the Packers do is find people with the good, not just personality, but characteristics and traits. They're not just looking for the tangibles and on the field stuff. They're looking for someone that has, again, the right belief, mentality, how they carry themselves, the way they go about their business. It's not just about the on the field stuff, because they want good people. They want people with good character. And, I think the reporters will probably echo that the team, you don't see a lot of drama up there in Green Bay. And again, regardless of whether there's one owner or hundreds of thousands of owners, um, it's not one that's in the spotlight, and I love Rodgers, and he brought a lot of attention, obviously, in certain situations and times toward the end of his career up there. But again, I think the media was relatively mild with him and all the players. But
Is he done now, or is he still playing like he's going to go for one more?
McCarthy's in Pittsburgh now. He's back home where he's from. And, I think whether they're trying to bring him in, they got a rookie in Howard and a somewhat veteran in Rudolph that they could go to for quarterback if need be. But I think it'd be nice to see one last show with him and McCarthy and some of the key wide receiver pieces that they got over there with Pittman and DK Metcalf and Warren as a running back. They got some good offensive weapons that I think it'd be nice to see McCarthy and Rodgers reunite after McCarthy got let go from the Packers, in probably Rodgers like fourth to last season. I think it'd be good to see them on one more run together.
Metcalf was a big part of my team that beat your team in fantasy football this last year.
We're going there, huh?
Mm-hmm. Number one, baby. Number one. Going back to back. You just watch. Sit back and watch. Why don't you take some recovery?
It's something I definitely get, and I think I talked about it last season, end of the last year. You got to take that time for yourself. You got to, people who have a certain mentality when it comes to work and just life in general, are just go, 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 and in conjunction with family, but self. You really have to take that time for yourself. I remember when I left the gaming industry, a few years back, having that second phone on me at all times. I think I told you I had those phantom rings, where I thought it was ringing or vibrating in my left pocket, and there's nothing in there anymore. It took me a couple months to really get out of it, and then kind of decompress. And then there was just this extra level of peace of mind, once I knew I didn't have it and didn't have to constantly check it, checking the coin in, checking the volume, the hold, and all these other things that, labor and that you wanted to look at if you cared about it, right? That's what they wanted. They wanted people who cared about the business as if it was their own. And again, when you have that mindset, you got to learn when to dial it back. And so you
Uh,
can recover, and then you can be just as good, if not better, as you were talking about muscles healing and such. So knowing when to take a break or having someone good around to tell you to take a break is important.
the stupidest thing I ever did was being proud for not taking any PTO one year. I didn't take a single day of PTO, and I was like, man, I'm really doing stuff. I'm serious about my career. I'm the guy. I'm the guy. That was idiot. You're burning yourself out. Well, number one, you're giving back money to your employer. That's part of your compensation is the paid time off. If you're compensated with paid time off, that's part of your pay. So you're just putting money back in the hands of the people that employ you. That's yours to use. And two, you're burning yourself out for no good reason. Effort does not make outcome necessarily. You need to work hard. You need to try hard to do better than yesterday and everything that we've always talked about. But you can't just fill up empty time with something that isn't productive. That's not helping you, and that's not helping your business. It's just making a false metric for you to lean back on and say, oh, I worked 12 hours today. I really did a good job. No, you probably did 6 hours of a good job, and you did 6 hours of a bunch of bullshit that didn't need to get done. Or somebody else could have done if you were properly delegating, or if you had a better process, would have already been done. And then you would be able to, go have a disgusting margarita with Coke in it in the afternoon instead of, checking your reports, because you would have already been done.
Yeah.
This is a really terrible drink. I'm really upset about this.
Yeah. Well, they won't be our sponsor either. There was a middle-aged gentleman that we worked with at one point in time, and
we are middle-aged gentlemen, Nathan.
Well, at the time he was too, and I was younger, so I'm gonna call him that.
That's fair.
But yeah, things are catching up. And he, this guy got so mad, because his production was not increasing based on the level of energy, time, and effort he was putting in, and I had to kind of eventually equate it to like a boulder. Like, you could push as hard as you want on this boulder, but if you don't find some tools and some leverage and or maybe some help, if you're not pushing it the right way, you're not going to make it move. You could work all the hours you want, but if you're not doing it in the right way, you're not going to get anywhere with it. So anyway, that was something it rang true just now when you mentioned that. And then shit, I forgot my second thought. But don't worry, it was a good one.
He only has the two.
Just believe it.
They rotate.
I'll come up with it in the like 10 minutes from now.
We'll do a post podcast post, a PS, if you will. Lastly, and I think the one that most gets talked about, always on the highlight reel, always being talked about with the greatest of all time, the GOATs, is performance under pressure. Clutch performers, focus, channeling, going back to Dan Gilbert, ignore the noise. We should do a whole episode on isms, honestly. Producer Ashley, please mark that down. We could actually go through that whole book and talk about each one of those, because that is all visionary stuff. But performance under pressure, your clutch guys, you think Steph Curry being able to just pop a three out of nowhere. You think about Joe Cool Montana being able to perform. What was that, four rings he had?
I'm not a Niners fan or a Chiefs fan, but he had enough.
Derek Jeter, always cool under pressure, and that's why he was the captain. And one that I really started thinking about was Muhammad Ali, who he's always portrayed himself as the dominant boxer, the one that was controlling the pace. But if you look back at his fights, most of his wins came in the later rounds. He would take some back and forth. He would wait for his moment, and then when we were getting close, usually it was pretty close on points when it came down to it, but he would get the KOs in those later rounds. It was just that something about that amount of pressure, the amount of need to perform right now just kicks it on for some people. And that's some people have it innately, like these people we talked about, but it can be developed. It's something you can learn.
I have it innately. Get it?
Innately.
Yeah. No, I don't know how you didn't mention MJ, but
We already had
anyway.
MJ in his early days.
There you go.
96, 97.
Like Lethal Weapon. So yeah, I used to be able to do that in college, man. My old roommate Maddie, we'd be running the beer pong table like 20 games in a row. And after drinking for a while, we kind of just look at each other, give me a little smack across the face, get me in the zone, but we thrived under the pressure. And people were like, how two guys this dumb looking and drunk could be this good at this game? They'd be so mad. But it reminds me of us at that work too, where we're very laid back and, kind of work hard, play hard mentality. But when push comes to shove, coming together, figuring it out. But that's when we do our best, where we've always felt that is under fire, crisis management in a sense that when the time's needed, flip that switch and get it done.
It's like what I've always attributed it to, because it is a skill that has been noted, by previous managers and things like that. It's almost like it just negates everything else. There's all this noise, to use Dan Gilbert's analogy. All this noise blocks out everything else. So now the only thing left is to focus on the problem that you're trying to solve right now. It's like having just your music too loud, and that's all you could pay attention to one thing. You have music blaring, and you got you're writing your paper, at the last minute for school or whatever. You got to have that one other thing to kind of focus you in and get rid of all the extraneous things that normally would pull away from making the decision. Again, it goes back to the decision making skills. If you have that, you're probably going to perform better under pressure, because you can just lock in. And we try to make it sound easy. It's not easy at all. It's so many people are and more so every day. It seems like so many people are overwhelmed by that level of noise or pressure. When you have 25 things coming at you, the ability to find the one that needs the attention now is not easy, but it can be learned if you're able to extrapolate basically the ramifications of whether or not you decide something now or work on something now versus working on it later. The ability to prioritize based on what the outcomes are that you need to be successful. The rest of that just becomes noise. And then once you take that pressure point, that pressure goal that you've put, you need to make that decision on right now, and you need to be clutch and get that done. Now you can go back and find the next thing. Now there'll be less pressure, and you'll be able to, it's not sustainable to always be under pressure, but being able to appreciate it for what it is, which is funneling your decision making to just that one point. I actually find it, like you said, we always have worked better under pressure. I almost find it therapeutic to have that, because it does quiet out kind of everything else that's just kind of sitting on your ledger there. All the things you wrote down that you need, all the windows that you have open on your computer, it pushes those all aside, just puts that one thing front and center.
You got to eat your vegetables first.
We would not know anything about that.
Yeah,
Although I have seen Nate survive an entire month on espresso and celery and carrots, just to make sure the celery was doing its job.
The tracers.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I at some point, some days I say, man, I kind of miss, having an office and being together. And then I remember we used to share a bathroom, and I remember that I'm grateful to be in Miami while you're up in Cleveland.
Yeah, you're gonna have to cut that shit out, Ash. No pun intended.
Remember when we put your desk in the bathroom? Ashley, I'm gonna send you a picture right now.
Yeah.
Hold on, I have it in my favorites.
Because Will did it on his way out. He actually talked one of his little henchmen, who might be currently locked up right now, into
should be currently locked up.
all my stuff into the bathroom and taking apart my desk and reassembling it in there. So when I came back from a vacation, there was nothing in my office except I think a big horse, maybe, or it might have just been
The
empty. I
horse
can't
may have
remember
been in
at the
there.
time.
The horse may have
And
been in there.
then I go to the bathroom. I was pretty pissed off, and Will conveniently took a vacation starting the day I returned. So when I found my stuff in the bathroom, I refused to move it and just said I'm working at Will's desk until it gets moved back. So upon Will's return, he had to have his little henchman take everything back apart and remove it and put it
Why
back in
they
my
didn't
house.
just do it in between, I don't know.
I remember I
But
was
yeah,
so mad. I wanted to put your shit in the infield. And I was like, this is something I'd lose my job for sure. But it
that
really
would
might
have
be
been a
worth it.
great gag. That was one of our better ones. We once had, I don't know how we got on to pranks, but it is part of I guess a big part of pressure is being able to release that too. If you're going to develop the ability to work under pressure, you have to be able to release as well. It's part of that recovery. And so we found in the early days, at least of our casino careers, pulling pranks is a great release. We
That
had
and
a
Starbucks.
we had an AGM. Yeah, start getting a frappuccino is relaxing every time. Um, we had an AGM that was cool. We enjoyed it. But shout out to Tracy Witchko, good solid person, solid operator. And she went on vacation, which was a terrible decision to make when we were around because we would fuck with people's offices. And at the time, we had just finished a promotion that the advertising for was a giant inflatable piggy bank. And so we took that deflated giant inflatable piggy bank, put that in her office, flipped on the inflator, shut the door, and let that rip. And there was absolutely no way for her to get into her office. They had to take the door kind of off the hinge in order to get in. And then, no, I believe they cut the power to the blower. And then because of how we had placed it, when they shoved it open in order to get it out, they had to take the door off its hinge to get
That
in
was
there.
the big blue one, right? Named Pam?
Piggy Smalls,
Piggy Smalls.
Pig
I
Papa,
remember that.
the notorious PIG. Yeah, that was a good one. We also
Keep
once
going.
took everything off the GM's desk and taped it to the ceiling. And then we did, and this will tell you exactly how long ago it was, we then did the Harlem Shake in his office. So there's a nice throwback for you.
I once
Good times.
super glued employees' stuff to their desk. And we also hid the Noyatrons in a
The
few computers,
Noitron.
phones, or underneath some
That thing worked.
some desks.
Like you did that to me once, and I thought for sure my computer was fucking up. I was waiting for the
I
blue
remember
screen to come
you
on.
actually you called Lambert a few times because
I'm sure
we
I
hid it
did.
under the phone or in the hole that went from your desk down to power it into the wall.
It was well done.
And yeah, those things were Noyatrons perfect. That reminds me of a story of Jack and his dad and my uncle. They were always kind of prank wars, and when they went out of town, I think he sliced a hole in their bed and hid it in the bed. And so in the middle of the night when they came back up, he my uncle was like to my aunt, did you hear that? And she's like, what? And then they said wait around because it randomly would make that noise. And I think I can't remember if it was like a baby laughing or like a hey over here or something like that. And so he's waking up and he heard it again, jumps out of bed, he's grabbing his pistol, he's walking around in his boxers, looking around through the house, stay in here. Jack's like, what the hell is going on? Pretty soon they got the cops there because they think somebody's like looking in or somebody's in the house. And hear my other uncle, hearing the story after, probably just cracking up because one of the officers, when he came in, he's like, I know this noise. Like, I've heard about this. And it was one of those little Noyatrons that you could hide, and it would sporadically, give that message, or the fake phone vibrate, or the cat meow, or something like that, a baby giggling. Oh, man, those things were perfect.
That would mess with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the viewers at home, you don't have to be fancy. Just get yourself a tin of sardines, open it slightly, put it up in the ceiling tiles, and let everything else work itself out. This is for entertainment purposes only. We do not recommend any of these behaviors. Please do not pull any pranks without a professional prank supervisor.
We're showing our age right now.
Well, everybody, you've wasted a perfectly good hour listening to the rantings of Will and Nate on Raising Spirits. Raising Spirits is a new standard podcast hosted by myself, Will Hockney, and once again, the great Nate Geeson. Cheers. Produced by Ashley Cuba Libre. Theme music by Marcus McLaughlin, music director Angel Flowers. Raise our spirits by following us on our socials at Raising Spirits Podcast or visiting newstandardconsulting.com/Raising Spirits. Check us out on the YouTubes. Like us in all the places, wherever they may be. Follow us.
Fucking like button.
Hit it. Punch it, Chewy. We'll see you next time.
Dude, what the fuck did they have in that drink, man?